because we have a busy agenda. We have two mechanical things that we need to go through, and then we'll go to our first order of our agenda. David, would you mind reading the county Zoom meeting, please?
Yes.
Okay.
This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at the meeting are, and I'll try to capture everyone here, Tom Paoletti, Todd Cohn, Ned Galloway, Dan Bailey, Marty Met, Rick Seaman, Nicole Scrow, Audrey Coker, Lee Condor, Peter Thompson. And did I miss anyone, Marty? That
No, I
think
know.
that
I was going to say that Judy Schlessel is excused. She's contacted me.
okay.
Okay.
Okay. Persons responsible for receiving public comment are the Places29 Rio Community Advisory Committee. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar. And I will also note that county staff who are present at this meeting is Serena Gruria, Community Engagement Specialist, David Benish, myself, Development Process Manager, and Carolyn Shaper, the Clerk for the Planning Commission. And we should have, or will have shortly, I hope, Kevin McDermott, Development Manager. That's it.
Okay, thank you. The next order of business is the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments? This is our August meeting. Not going to have anybody make a motion to accept the minutes then, please?
So moved.
Lee made it. Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. That's Rick. All in favor? Raise your hands and just say aye. Okay.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is passed. Okay, I am now going to move on to the Rio Corridor Plan Community Meeting. And I am going to turn the mic over to Serena Gruyer. Serena, it's all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Serena Gruya. I grew you some plants, and I am the public engagement specialist for the county. It's nice to see some familiar faces already, and I've had the pleasure of seeing many of you at the community pop-ups and reading your comments on the public input website and some emails. So tonight we are going to hear from Daniel Heyer, who is the lead engineer for Line and Grade, the local consulting company that has been hired for this project. And we will then have a period of time for questions. And so in terms of directions for that, if you aren't familiar yet, we have the Q&A pod, which is located, if you're on a computer, at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that little Q&A button and you'll be able to pose a question. It is possible that we won't get to all of the questions today, but rest assured we will receive them, and we're going to be preparing an FAQ of sorts that will compile a lot of the questions and comments that we've been receiving. So with that, I'm going to introduce Daniel to everyone, and he will start us off with a presentation.
Thank you, Serena. I don't see anyone's face but my own, and so I hope that people can hear me. And I am going to share my screen, and we will get started. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to this evening's community presentation. I am Daniel Heyer. You might recognize me from our award-winning video series where we walked everyone through both an introduction to the project as well as some design concepts that we've been exploring, as well as I think Serena put out a podcast, which from what I've heard was very good. So kudos, Serena. So if you're here tonight, hopefully you have been able to engage with this content. And as time has passed, we've heard a number of folks responding with emails or phone calls. So thank you to everyone for being involved. Tonight, we're gonna have our presentation or our time together really in two parts. Part one is where I'll be talking for about 10 minutes, and then part two will be for you to talk and for us to listen and or respond as appropriate. So during part one, which I've called Identifying Our Common Ground, we'll talk about that. And then part two, I want to confirm and revisit the intent of our work and what we're trying to do here. So with that, we'll jump right into part one, Identifying Our Common Ground. And I think this is a really important thing to talk about because I think we actually all want the same thing, believe it or not. We want roads and sidewalks that are safe, both for our families, our neighbors, people who visit us, people who are in the area. That's something we all want. So we can start with that. We all want access to places where we walk or bike or drive or get to the grocery store or go down the Greenway trail system. So access is really important. We want to protect the environment and we want to create vibrant public places, the public realm, which belongs to you and to everyone, to all of us, our shared space. We want that to be thoughtful and to be good stewards of these things. And then finally, at least in terms of my list for this evening, we want to promote optimal travel and reasonable solutions to known challenges. I think whether we agree or disagree on what those challenges are, I think we want to solve both the challenges we know and the challenges that we can predict. So that's our starting point. That's what I'm calling our common ground. And we will work through some of those items together kind of as a foundation of understanding for our time together today. When I think about safety, I think about the way vehicles interact with one another and the way that vehicles interact with people. And one way to promote that engagement safely is for travel speeds to be slower. That's something I think is true and we can all agree upon. And another thing that promotes safety is for the environments to be predictable, both for people, they know where to cross, they know how to cross, they know where they're going when they cross, and for cars to know when and where to expect people to be. So that's what I think about when I'm thinking about safety as we begin to explore our design and planning process for the corridor. And a couple things to think about as we think about safety is that the slower that a vehicle goes, the more likely for both people and property to not be severely damaged or dead, to call it like it is. If a vehicle is going 20 miles an hour or less, there's a 90% chance of a pedestrian surviving a conflict. 20 miles an hour more, and those odds are exactly inverse. It's a 10% chance. So keeping vehicles slower should be one of our goals. However you think about that, that should be something we're considering together. Something else is how we are using our space along the corridor. We want our space to be used well. We only have so much space to work with. We're trying to keep all of these proposed improvements or proposed ideas within the existing right-of-way. So we're trying to use the space we have well and to organize it and allocate it in such a way that promotes the goals of safety. Something that we'll try to share with people, I guess, through a link in the website is the Vdot crash data website that we look at a lot. And in the case of our presentation, I randomly picked one of these spots at an intersection along the corridor. And as you can see, a driver failed to maintain proper control of their vehicle. And when those types of things happen, we want to be creating spaces that people are more naturally protected, because sometimes cars don't do what they're supposed to do. And so creating a place for pedestrians to be protected and minimizing the opportunity for conflict is one of our goals. When I think about promoting access, we have a challenge on this corridor. We are trying to balance both access and mobility. And it is a balance. When I think about mobility, you think about cars trying to get from one point to another. They need to move. They need to be mobile. Think about access, you're talking about, hopping in your car and going across the road to the grocery store, to the gas station. And this road needs to do both. And it's going to need to continue to do both. And so we need to find the balance. And that means our design needs to be both adaptable and resilient, both for known challenges and challenges we don't know yet. When I talk about promoting good access, we talk about removing confusion and promoting predictability. And this may be some images you saw in the previous videos, and they're good examples of where does the pedestrian actually go when they cross, and do they know where to go? And beginning to plan for future projects that might be able to correct known and current deficiencies. Again, using access as one of our talking points, using the space we have, and trying to honor the built environment as much as possible where we can, right? There's a lot of infrastructure in place. We don't want to necessarily take it all out and put it all back. We want to try to use what we have and use it responsibly. So that's another way that we can be promoting access. When I think about the environment and public spaces, I think that we have a lot of work to do on this corridor. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement for the pedestrian experience, for sure. And people need to feel comfortable when they're on the corridor. We heard some feedback about this notion of human scale. And I think people think that we're necessarily just trying to honor cars and vehicles. And that's not the case. We're trying to create safe and pleasant places for people to engage each other and the environment and the buildings along the corridor. And that is by definition human scale. A part of our study, whether that's been clear or not, is actually to begin to assist the county with what building engagement zones along the corridor look like. This is a very suburban corridor. There are cars moving very quickly. There are broad parking lots directly adjacent to the road, and then there's buildings set back further. And that doesn't really help promote a public realm, which is what this space is. And so over time, with proper planning, this corridor can begin to be augmented for the better, one step at a time. When we talk about public spaces and the environment, we're talking about design solutions that actually improve those things. Whether the information that's been shared with you or not has been enlightening to you, a lot of what we are currently proposing does actually honor tested understandings about what is better for the environment. Roundabouts actually indeed are better for the environment than a traditional traffic signal. And being able to, again, integrate public space with these improvements is another way of promoting human scale. Whether these solutions are chosen or not is not the point of our study. The point of our study is to be thinking about how we can include these things with our proposed recommendations, which we're currently working through. When it comes to identifying optimal solutions to known challenges, this image on the screen was one of the first images that I developed when we began working on this project, because there's so much happening along this short stretch of roadway. There's been so many studies and so many discrete efforts which have attempted to solve specific challenges in isolation. And yet we have the honor and the privilege to actually try to unite these efforts and bring cohesion between them. And so there's a lot happening. There's a lot that we're trying to connect and integrate. And so just knowing that one solution could create another problem, or solving one problem could create another. And so all of these challenges are interconnected, and finding the right balance is what we're looking for. When it comes to optimal travel and finding reasonable solutions, I think it's important to clarify and for us to understand where these vehicles are and how many of them there are. There's a number that I've shared and I stand by about how many vehicles use the corridor, but where those vehicles are is another understanding. As you can see from this image, certain places of the corridor experience cars in excess of 30,000 vehicles per day. And other areas on the corridor have cars that are much less. right? So this is not a one number fits all scenarios. This is a highly variable environment with different numbers of cars in different places at different times of day. So understanding both the current and future vehicle projections is a part of our understanding and how we approach creating and looking for solutions. So part two, I'll be very brief here, is just to confirm the intent of our work, to make that clear for everyone. I do believe that we are working to restore human scale along the corridor. There's so much about this corridor from one end to the other that does not promote a human scale. You know, being able to use the road and feel safe. Walking across the street and hoping that nobody isn't paying attention on their cell phone, because you know if they were, it wouldn't be good for you. So these two images for me, I think, highlight what we're trying to do for people to actually feel comfortable along the roadway, not in one place more than any other, but for the corridor in general. And if we can do that, successfully and create a long-range plan for the next 40, 50, 60 years, we should be able to create a corridor that is safe and adaptive and resilient and capable of meeting the various needs of various people. So yes, a part of our work is trying to understand who uses the corridor. That's residents, that's students, that's commuters, that's many different people, but we want to know who's using it and how they are using it. We also want to think about where redevelopment is likely to happen and how we can help guide it so that as it does happen, we can end up with better public spaces. And we want to be very clear about what are the current deficiencies and how we can resolve them. And that is what our team is currently working toward. Part of understanding our job is actually to understand who lives here. There's a lot of different people who live here. There's people of higher and lower socioeconomic status. There's people of higher and lower education status. And in some places, there's a relatively high degree of poverty and people who need various modes of transit to actually get through day to day. And so part of our work is not saying one group is more important than another, but saying all groups are important, and how we balance the needs of these various groups is a part of our responsibility in this study. So that is what we're here to do tonight. We're here to affirm what we're working towards, and that is to restore human scale through various practices contained within a long-range planning document. We're going to try to bring uniformity and unity and cohesion to the corridor in general, and we're still working on it. You know, we are working through. We have developed some concepts, and we are exploring some ideas, and we are sharing them. And tonight, we're hoping that your questions will lead to really good dialogue and really good increased understanding. So I think the last thing I'm sharing with you tonight, just for clarity's sake, is where we're at in the process. And as Serena has previously laid out, the project will be a 4-stage project. Stage 1 was Discover. That was in the first few months of this year. Stage 2 was Define. That's when our team was more or less behind the stage, behind the curtain, really doing a lot of research, reading, understanding, analysis on the corridor. And then we began to develop ideas and present them. And so we are in September, and this is a process. This idea of exploring and developing ideas will continue for a few more months before we get to a final stage of deciding what this corridor plan will or will not include. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I guess stop sharing my screen until I need to share it again for some reason. And I'm trying to figure out how to stop. Oh, there, stop share, the big red button. Great. Okay, so I'm done for now. I'm going to mute myself and I'm just going to sit back and listen until I need to answer some questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. This is Serena again. And again, if you would like to share a question, we have the Q&A pod. I see we have a few people calling in by phone. So if you'd like to raise your hand, you can do so dialing *9. We have one question so far, and I'm going to wait a little bit for some other people to share some questions. I have also prepared some of the frequently asked questions that we've been hearing both on the public input website and at the pop-ups. So I'm going to kick it off with a question for Daniel. And the question is, why did you explore an alternate location for the roundabout?
Why did we explore an alternate location for the roundabout? That was something that when we took a step back and said, we're not actually holding any particular solution in higher regard than any others. And we looked for trying to bring ideas to the table that might actually make things better than currently proposed. We landed on a different location that brought simplicity to the geometry in the area. And that simplicity did a couple of things for us. It actually allowed us to maintain compliance with access management standards that Vdot recommends, which their own study by their own consultant didn't do. But when you're talking about trying to create a safe and cohesive corridor and intersections along the corridor, one way to help promote that is by trying to keep compliant with access management, and that is the spacing between intersections of various kinds and entrances of various kinds. And if you can do that, you naturally create safer environments for people and cars to interact. So what we've currently conceived for the roundabout, I'm assuming this is the roundabout at John Warner and Rio as opposed to the roundabout at Hillsdale. But the location where it's currently shown allowed us to meet all compliance items with regard to access management standards, which is why we still think it's a solid option. We're not saying it's the silver bullet, but we're thinking that it is a good option.
Great, thank you. So Ashley asked the question, and I think this is on a lot of people's minds, about just future growth, and her question specifically addresses the growth of development along Belvedere Boulevard and the potential need for a stoplight, or can you just address generally how you design for growth, and then specifically around that intersection?
Yes, we are considering growth, and that's probably one of the most paramount things that we need to be considering, because again, I used some words earlier called adaptive and resilient. And when you create infrastructure that's adaptive and resilient, it's inherently capable to grow with the needs of the community. And we have a growing community. We have a lot of areas along the corridor that continue to grow. And so the solutions we're currently proposing, we believe, are optimal for growing with the community's needs and removing conflict points and removing delays at the intersection specifically, so as more people continue to move into the area, that we've created a plan and prepared the county to make informed decisions about what type of infrastructure will actually be able to serve the community into the future. Because the area is going to continue to grow. Just even the known developments that we know about now won't be the end of it. The area will continue to grow. We're seeing in the city's future land use plan that the city's land along the corridor will likely become more dense. And we know that there's areas along the corridor in the county that will likely be more dense because of the comprehensive plan's recommendations. So yes, we're planning for growth, and we're trying to make informed decisions about what can grow with, what infrastructure can grow with the needs of the community.
All right, our next question, again echoed by many, are just about how roundabouts work for pedestrians and bicyclists, in terms of if you don't have a signalized intersection. Just talk us through how that might work for cyclists and pedestrians.
I'm going to go back to a screen share because I think sometimes it's helpful to look at this with pictures, right? So, not even sure what this slide says. Okay, so I'm going to show you an intersection, two intersections. It's the same intersection before and after we redesigned it. And sadly, I don't have the final pictures to show you because it's recently been completed. But here's an intersection right smack dab in the middle of a college campus in the city of Roanoke. The college campus straddles two sides of this road that share a lot of similarities to Rye Road. And these blue arrows on the screen represent the existing or the previously existing crossing distances for pedestrians. And when we improved that intersection with the roundabout, you'll notice that the crossing distances for pedestrians got substantially less. Substantially. We're talking 40% less crossing distance to pedestrians. And by doing that, you naturally eliminate a higher likelihood of a pedestrian vehicle conflict. But you also create an environment where cars go slower. And so reducing crossing distances for pedestrians and promoting slower vehicle travel around circular shapes create safer situations. And the refuge islands that the pedestrians stop at, which do two things. They promote the cars entering the roundabout, in this case, at an angle that keeps them going slow, while at the same time allows the pedestrian to cross one direction of traffic at a time. And so if you're a pedestrian and you're let me see if I can draw. Yeah, I think I can. If you're a pedestrian and you're standing on the sidewalk here and you want to cross to the sidewalk over here, you will come to the crosswalk. You will watch for a vehicle approaching, just one direction. You will cross about 14 feet of asphalt. You will stand in a refuge area for just a moment as you begin to cross the next lane of travel, where again, you only look in one direction. And then when you feel like you are ready to cross, you cross. Now, in a circular intersection like a roundabout, pedestrians always have the right of way. And vehicles yield. They yield to one another and they yield to pedestrians. And so you would then cross the other 14 feet of pavement, and then you're safely on the other side. And that is how a pedestrian would cross the intersection. If you happen to be on a bicycle, you have two options, really. If you're more of a conservative rider and more of a hobbyist, say, you would be riding in the bike lane, and then the bike lane will merge with the sidewalk and become a shared use path for some space. And you will cross like a pedestrian, and then at the other side, you will merge back on to the bike lane. If you're more of an extreme cyclist, you're more than inclined to use the roundabout like a car, because the vehicle speeds in the roundabout will be less than 20 miles per hour, and the cyclist can probably go about that fast too. So that is how a pedestrian and a cyclist can engage with the roundabout. Since we don't have the benefit of a dialogue at the moment, I don't know if I have effectively answered your question, but I hope I have. And yeah, so I guess Serena, I'm gonna look to you to tell me if I need to keep talking about this or not.
I think we might come back to this also. I see a few more questions, but I've been kept to task, and I actually didn't ask you to follow up on the response or the question that was about a potential traffic light or additional intervention at Belvedere Boulevard and Rio.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's something that we need to relook at. But a lot of times when you're looking at intersection design and you're trying to follow these access management spacing standards, you're trying to space intersections a certain distance apart. And that distance at the moment is not at the front of my mind, but at the full-blown intersection like a roundabout and a full-blown intersection like a traffic signal, generally want to be a certain distance apart. Now, what we've currently proposed at Belvedere is what's called a green T. And what that green T has done is it's eliminated the conflict points through the left-hand turn. And you can use a traffic signal at a green T. And so, yeah, and the number, actually, I've got in my notes here in front of me. You want to keep distances about 1,000 feet between intersections. And so the current distance is 600 feet. And so we would not actually want to propose a signal there, because that would actually be counterproductive to good movements for all users of the roadway. You know, it's been brought up by a couple of different people, and I think maybe we should discuss with Vdot what it might look like to include a traffic light there. But this is actually a really good opportunity to talk about Hillsdale just briefly, because what we see at Hillsdale is two traffic signals within a couple hundred feet of each other. I think it's like 200 feet. And that's why that intersection is so, both one, unsafe, and two, painful to go through during a peak hour travel time. So that's a good example of what happens when intersections get too close to each other. So we're trying to keep them spaced out. And, you know, based on some revisions that we might be making after listening to folks, maybe we're able to get some more space between these intersections and make it work a little better. So it's not off the table, but it's certainly something we're thinking about.
Okay, Mary is potentially a call-in listener and has raised their hand. Mary, I'm going to unmute you now so you are able to ask your question. Mary, are you able to unmute? I might have to come back to you. Okay, we'll try Mary in a little bit. Another question came in from Jennifer. They asked, can you provide how you came up with the number of cars that use different portions of the corridor? And did you include projects that are in the works or planned in that count?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That's a good question. And that data is updated and published almost annually from Vdot. Those numbers were from 2019, were the most recent. They usually lag behind a little bit, but Vdot publishes very comprehensive statewide roadway average daily trips that people like us can reference, and people like you, if you know where to go on their website to find it, you can get that data. So that data is pretty current. But yes, we are including future. Those numbers don't include future people. Our work and our analysis does. And so those numbers that you saw on my screen with various numbers like 19,000, 6,000, 2,000, 30,000, whatever, that came from Vdot.
Thanks. The next question comes from Todd, and they ask, how are the projects, and I'm thinking that means the intersection projects or general projects, prioritized, and which ones will be first?
That's a good question, and that's, I think, to be determined. What we've done in the past on similar corridor studies is we actually give the power to the people, and we allow folks to vote on it, and we use those insights to help guide things. I mean, there's some improvements that need to come before others, just pragmatically. But I think that, you know, when it comes to when this plan is finished in some time, and we know all the things that will be recommended as a result of it, we will then work on prioritizing them. And it won't make sense to make some improvements before others just logically, right? You can't really improve, say, a bunch of sidewalks in the middle of Rye Road if they're not really connecting to anywhere. So we need to make sure we're prioritizing projects that can really catalyze long-term improvements. So what I suspect we may recommend is that we work from the margins of the corridor toward the middle. So we'd want to be working really from the ends of our study area in. So in the case of phase one, those recommendations might look like trying to make improvements at the John Warner intersection and the Hillsdale intersection, and bookending the corridor, and then beginning to infill with some of the smaller projects that we can do over time and as properties redevelop.
Serena, if I can add too, and maybe add to the complication to this, hopefully I won't, but as Daniel mentioned, the study will probably establish some sort of tiering or priorities. That will be the priorities that are identified in this plan. Once this plan is accepted in some form by the Board of Supervisors, the board will have to weigh the projects within this plan with other plans that have been developed and other recommendations for improvement within the whole county. So there is a sort of a second set of prioritizing after this plan's developed, where limited public funds that are out there decisions need to be made countywide as to what are the highest priority projects. That's done on an annual basis by the Board of Supervisors, where they look at a number of needs in the county for transportation projects and create a priority list for improvements. So this plan, much like a comprehensive plan or other corridor plans, sort of inform the board of the needs in this area. Those needs have to be balanced ultimately with other needs in the county.
Thanks, and thank you so much, everyone, for the questions. They're really, really wonderful. Question from Ben. I saw the use of an extended mixed-use path along the northbound lane for bikes and pedestrians. A+ to that, and the roundabout with separated mixed-use path. My question is around how bikes are expected to cross traffic to roads on the southbound side. Is the expectation to use the crosswalks? You're muted, Daniel.
Thank you. That was bound to happen at least once. Can I get you to reread that? I need to kind of like, or can I read it? I need to make sure I'm hearing these thoughts correctly.
Actually, Ben, would it be okay? Yeah, Ben, I'm gonna unmute you and maybe you can rephrase that, make it so Daniel can talk about this. Let's see, I
Yeah.
think I just did it. Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question was just if you're going along the mixed use path on the northbound lane and you're not at a roundabout, how are you expected to cross if you're a cyclist? Are you supposed to take the crosswalks or go up to one of the other roundabouts and go around? Just what's the expectation there?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ben. And the current conceived idea is that there would be a number of mid-block crossings identified for people and bicycles to get from one side to the other to get to the shared use path. And this is a little bit of the balancing act we're trying to play about using the space we have to use it well. Because the current proposed idea of what the typical section of the roadway could be is trying to prioritize the shared use path, which creates the connection for the Northtown Trail. Because folks would literally be able to get from downtown Charlottesville to the airport on a shared use path if we can make that connection. That unlocks a huge opportunity for the county. But in doing that, as currently conceived, we've taken the bike lanes off the road, which is not desirable. But if we wanted to maintain those bike lanes in the road, we would be purchasing right of way along the entire corridor. And that would make a lot of these improvements infeasible, to be honest with you. So the current plan is that the shared use path along the northbound travel lanes, as you described, would be for cyclists and for pedestrians. And when you needed to cross, you would have to find one of these mid-block crossings that would be at some regular interval to get across. I recognize that that's not ideal, and we're still considering if there's other alternatives that we can get those bike lanes, at least on the southbound travel lanes for cyclists. So that's a great question. Thanks for riding your bike, and we're still exploring that. So keep up with us, and when we report back in a few weeks or months, hopefully we'll have some more insight about that.
Thanks. And then I have, I'm going to combine two questions, one from Judy and one from Janelle. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's about compliance items and Vdot criteria, which I think are similar concepts. But what are the compliance items that caused you to move the roundabout so close to homes and replace part of Dunlora Drive with Rio Road? And then how does moving the roundabout meet the Vdot criteria better? You're muted, and I'm hoping that those questions feel like they should go together.
Yeah, and so what I was going to say was I think I should probably pull up my share slide again, because sometimes these sorts of things go better if we can look at them together. So let's see a good slide that might show that. Well, maybe we'll just do a PDF. Can you? Oh, I can't see that. Our screen. Adobe PDF. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone. It's like being a short order chef right now, you know. All right. So when we talk about access management, we talk about spacing. There's a couple things to be, oh, darn it. Sorry. I am not doing great at the moment. Here we go. Okay. I meant to go try to draw and I clicked stop share. So currently you have a traffic signal at this intersection and you have Dunlora Drive that goes like this, and you've got Varick, and then you're going to have some sort of entrances that happen along the Wetzel property. And then you've got another entrance in here. So when we talk about access management, there's, depending on the road type, whether it's an arterial road like Rio, whether it's a collector, well, this part of Rio Road is an arterial. This part of Rio Road is a collector. And then other streets like Dunlora are considered local roads. And each of these road typologies has different requirements for what the spacing between, say, an intersection or an entrance or another roadway needs to be. And what you can see is that, in particular, this intersection where Dunlora Drive tees into Rio, about 180 feet from this intersection, is probably the biggest challenge in the vicinity of this intersection, because that is the current primary lack of compliance. And so as you add more and more entrances along this road, you're going to continue to compound that. Now, by more or less removing this chunk altogether and allowing the traffic to go into the circle this way, what we've done is we've created additional length of roadway to create the space for all of these intersections to begin to tie into each other. Now, admittedly, this has folks coming out of Dunlora going right into the intersection. It has folks from Varick coming into the intersection this way. So if you wanted to go, this is where I need to clear and start over. If you wanted to go on Dunlora.
Hey, Daniel, can you zoom in? Can you zoom in? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I need to order of operations, because if the zoom is active, then I can't pan, so I have to go. All right, is that better? A little better?
Yeah, maybe you can cross
Okay.
out the bookmarks. You can just drop that.
I couldn't hear you.
If you X out your bookmarks, that might give us more space.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, annotate. And if you're watching this on a phone or a tablet, then yeah, this is going to be hard to see. So we can try to, maybe present some more polished graphics that indicate these points later. Now I have no idea what I was saying. Something about access management. If you're going to leave Dunlora, if you're going to leave your neighborhood, if you live in Dunlora, if you're going to leave your neighborhood, if you live in Varick, you're going to start with Dunlora. You're going to go around the roundabout and go like this. Now, under the Vdot, well, this is where I should just show the Vdot conceived idea, because this is their work, not mine. Let's see, stop share. Let's go look at Vdot's plan. Actually, I have slides for this, I think, illustrate this point pretty well. Share screen.
And while Daniel's pulling that up, I just want to remind everyone that we're going to post this video as well, so we'll be able to review this later.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's just start with Vdot's idea. Okay, if you live in Dunlora and you want to go to Penn Park, you will more or less follow one of these lines. You will come down the road. You will use this new intersection to go into the roundabout, slingshot around, and go like this, right? Now, this distance right here does not qualify for access management spacing. Vdot knows that, but their study was singly focused on the intersection. Again, when I talk about us having the privilege to look at the interconnectivity of various improvements, this is what I mean by that. And so because Dunlora remains very close to this roundabout, and if this is what ends up being built, then all of the people from Dunlora who come out in the mornings who don't want to go northbound on Rio are now all coming into this intersection and all waiting for the cars to come down the road before they can enter into the road and then enter into the roundabout and go whatever way that they want to go. So when we talk about access management, we talk about spacing things out and creating simplicity so that movements are more predictable, for one, and for two, creating space so cars don't get log jammed. Because you can already see that if you're coming out here at 7:30 in the morning, there's a high degree that there's going to be a lot of cars on this road, and you're going to be waiting, and not just you, but all the neighbors in Albemarle and Varick Street will be waiting with you. So, in contrast, since we're talking about this, in contrast, this would be the equivalent under what we've currently conceived as an idea. And so if you live in Dunlora, you have direct access to go any which way you want. You don't have to go wait in line to get into the intersection, to go around it, to go somewhere. You just go right into the intersection and go whichever way you want. That's simpler. But that's just one idea. So when we talk about access, I'm just going to try to land the plane here with access management because I feel like I lost the plot a little bit on it. But this space here is now compliant, right? Because if this bit of road went away and everybody funneled up the road this way, everybody being the cars that currently travel this way, not everybody on the corridor. And so by creating that space and allowing these folks to go directly into the intersection, we've removed what was the access management problem. That's how we chose to think about solving that. Again, that's just one idea. I hope at this point I've answered the question. If I haven't, I'll try again.
Daniel, don't stop sharing your screen. I have another question. I ride my bike from Penn Park to John Warner Parkway Trail. Where exactly would I ride in the roundabout?
If you're coming from Penn Park to get onto the trail, you
Yes.
would never even go into the roundabout. You would basically avoid it altogether. Well, depending on how you choose to ride, I suppose. But if you're coming this way and you're riding your bike, you would just go like this. Or if this actually ends up becoming some kind of public park space, I would imagine that there would be some kind of connection that goes straight through and you go right on your merry way. It would probably actually be relatively preferable for you to go this way if under our current scheme, as compared to, again, let's go, I am not a Zoom expert here. Go back to this guy. If you're a biker in this version, and I'm trying to get the Zoom screen to let me clear my drawings here. Okay, so you're a biker in this scenario. You are coming down the road from Penn Park and you want to get to the path on the John Warner Parkway. I'm just going to try to figure this out on the fly. Maybe you could try to cross over the street somewhere in advance. I don't see a crossing for bikes in here unless you go up, but then there's no sidewalk here yet, although I think it's being built. You'd come across and cross and go like this. So if I'm you and I live in Penn Park and I want to ride my bike to the trail along the John Warner Parkway, this might not work out as well for you, but maybe I'm missing something.
Thank you, and thank you for your Zoom drawing skills. I don't think I could do that. Our next question is from Sandy. You stated that the redesign of the John Warner Parkway roundabout meets access guidelines, but you did not address the negative impact this change has directly on 3 residential neighborhoods. Can you address this?
Trying to figure out what we mean by negative impact. Let's see. By negative impact, I think you mean that maybe it's closer to the properties. If that's the case, sure, it is closer. I'm not going to try to act like it's not, but it certainly is all within public right-of-way or publicly owned land. So this is not taking private property to implement something. If you're talking about negative impact in terms of what I've been reading in emails about fumes from idling cars or pollution or congestion, I actually think this is going to be a much preferred for you than some of the other options currently conceived. Not that there's not others and not that we won't think of some more, but I don't know, unless the negative impact is simply the proximity and the location of the intersection, I don't know that there's a whole lot of other ones to really talk about from my perspective. It's closer to Dunlora, sure, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
So here's a follow-up from Roy. Why is the movement of Rao Road, which is high volume, on top of the footprint of current Dunlora Drive, which is a neighborhood street, considered safer? But why is that considered safer and better for residents of Dunlora Park at Varick Street?
Stop share. I need to read that one. Sorry, let me pull up these questions so I can read them. Where's that one?
It's Roy's question, 627, if you can see that.
Okay. Why is the movement of Rio Road, which is high volume, on top of the footprint of the current Dunlora Drive, which is a neighborhood street, considered safer and better for residents of Dunlora at Varick Street? Well, that's a good question. And maybe we can talk about, again, I'm going to try to keep that question fresh in my mind while I get to some images here. I'm going to do my screen. I should just keep my screen on share, I think. Let's see. The problem is when I share my screen, I can't see the question anymore, at least that I know of. So let me do one more read here. Roy, why is the movement of Rio Road, which is high volume, on top of the footprint of the Dunlora Drive and Neighborhood Street, considered safer and better for residents of Dunlora and Varick Street? Well, okay. Well, if we talk about safer, and I think we already talked a little bit about this, part of what's safer is predictability. Part of what's safer is slower vehicle speeds. And part of what's safer is pedestrians having shorter crossing distances. And as you can see on my screen currently, I have two dashed lines, and I hope you can see this. If you're looking on a phone, I'm sorry, I'll try to zoom in. Just someone wave at me if I need to try to zoom. But if you live at Varick Street, and let me get my handy dandy pen. This is Varick. If you live here and you want to get to I guess I'm assuming pedestrian here. So safer for pedestrians. Well, one, you got to jaywalk somewhere, so that's not exactly safe. And then you walk along the roadside edge, and then you get to here, and then you walk along this trail, and then you cross this crossing here, which I believe, what is this crossing? 46 feet. So you've jaywalked, you've walked along a shoulder, and then you've gone across an intersection at a length of 46 feet. Whereas if we go to another idea, again, let me get oh, here we go. Another idea, how is it safer? Well, under this comparable idea, if you live in Varick Street, let me get my pen out. It's not wanting to reveal itself to me. So I don't know if you can see my mouse or not. But if you live in Varick, you're going to walk along a sidewalk and cross one lane of traffic at a time, 14 feet and 14 feet, and then you are in green space for the rest of your trip. So I do actually think that this would be much safer for someone who lives in Varick, on Dunlora Varick Street, but that's just thinking about what promotes safety from a kind of a planning and engineering perspective.
I have a follow-up question from Nancy, specific to the pedestrian crosswalks. They ask, you didn't mention that pedestrians have the right of way in the zebra crosswalks. What you said was when the pedestrian is ready to cross, they can. What does that mean? Would there be flashing lights with buttons that pedestrians can press to alert cars to their intent to cross? Can you just clarify the pedestrian crossing?
Yeah, great clarification. Pedestrians have the right of way, but part of that is the pedestrian making the decision to cross. So when you decide to cross, you cross, and you have the right of way. Cars will yield to you, and the way that they're designed, this is where I like to geek out a little bit on a roundabout, just for a moment. The way that they're designed is very specific in that the space between the roundabout itself and the crosswalk is the length of a car. And so a car approaching a crosswalk where a person might be crossing, again, they're going slower because the roundabout is designed to keep vehicle speeds more or less below 20 to 22 miles per hour. The car can pull out of the roundel, which is the round part, and allow the pedestrian to cross without impeding traffic flow. And so yet again, this is where I think the roundabout offers an ability to allow traffic to keep moving, allow pedestrians to have the right of way, and allow cars to be able to honor the pedestrian right of way, kind of all sync at the same time. Can't say that word right now.
Thanks. We're going to shift up to the other side of the corridor now. We have a few questions about the so-called peanut traffic circle at Old Brook. From Tom, the design of the peanut traffic circle at Old Brook Road would require traffic coming from 29 wanting to make a left onto Old Brook Road to go around the two circles, then cut across oncoming traffic in order to make a left onto Old Brook Road. Am I interpreting this correctly? Would the traffic on Rio Road have to yield to traffic in the circle? Is this a better solution than a traffic signal? And then a follow-up is any of the space within the peanut usable?
Great questions. I'm going to share screen again as I pull up a different presentation from last time. These are great questions. And I think it was Tom was the asker's name. Tom, those are very astute observations and well done for keeping clued in here on what's happening. So in this current image on my screen, Rio is left to right, 29 would be to the right side of the image, and K-Tech to the left. And so this road, top left, is Hillsdale, and so on and so forth. So yes, the space within the peanut shape would be presumed to be usable. And one idea that I personally really like to think about right now is this is actually the highest point on the corridor as well. This is the corridor's high point. And this could be a very unique place for some kind of gateway or kind of art and place type installation where there's a green space of some kind of design that actually is at the high point of the corridor where you can see the mountains. And so there's definitely an opportunity here for some kind of both traffic calming, public art, public space, although probably not where you want to play with your kids with a kite, but some kind of green space. So I do think that space can and should be used. With regard to your question about if you would have to basically circumnavigate the peanut shape, that's true. And currently, the reason we're proposing this as an idea is simply we're trying to get all directions of travel into a singular intersection. Because what we're seeing right now at this intersection is that they are so close together. They're so close that they're acting like one intersection anyway. They're within, I think, they're supposed to be 1,000 feet apart and they're less than 200. So they're less than 20% of the spacing that should be required. And there's really no way that I can think of, unless you choose to close off one approach, one direction of travel. Like if you were to actually close this off and force cars to come here and close this off and force cars to come here, or some combination like that, where you're truly closing off access points, you're gonna have to get all directions of this 8-way intersection to act together. And the peanut-shaped roundabout accomplishes that. It doesn't necessarily accomplish it without inconveniencing certain traffic movements that might apply to some people. Now, this is the worst intersection in the county. This intersection has, I think I have the crash data open on my screen. I can open that in just a minute here. Stop share. Let's just take a look together, shall we? At share my screen. Oh, I don't have to keep changing windows. Let's see here. Crash data. Okay. All these little circles represent a crash, right? This is one of the highest crash sites in the county. And here's why. Because they're not spaced properly and cars can't queue properly, and there's no turn lanes for right-hand cars to turn. If you are headed northbound on Rio and you pass Northfield, but you intend to turn right on Old Brook, the car behind you might not also be anticipating that because they also just went through the first intersection with you, which leads to rear end collisions if a car then suddenly turns and goes onto Old Brook. So I will be very quick to acknowledge and to share that there doesn't seem to be a silver bullet at Hillsdale Old Brook. The idea of trying to reroute Hillsdale or reroute Old Brook or Northfield or some combination thereof is certainly something to consider and something we are considering. But in terms of bringing all of those intersections to a place where they can operate effectively together, you have to make it act as one intersection, because they're so close, they're effectively one intersection. And that's what we're trying to do. We did present that idea to Vdot because we wanted to get a little bit of feedback on if we were going down the wrong path. And at least as I heard their response, it was supportive of the idea because they've been trying to figure out themselves how to get that intersection to act as one. And that's one way to do it. There might be others, and we can keep thinking about that for sure. So good question, Tom. Thank you.
And about that extra green space, is there any use for that? Or you already addressed that with no kite flying?
We talked about that. Yeah, that's definitely going to get used. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So David, there's a question for you from, let's see, Lloyd. He asks, why isn't there a plan to improve the intersection at Putt Putt Place? It is nearly impossible to make a left turn into and out of this road. And we saw this at the when we did the pop-up last week.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah, this is.
You go ahead, Daniel.
Well, this highlights the importance of a long-range planning document for the corridor, is what I'm leading with. And there is discussion about rerouting Hillsdale through the Fashion Square Mall and trying to bring Hillsdale to that intersection. The challenge with that is, let me share my screen again. Sorry, folks, for getting, I don't know, car sick. If we do end up trying to reroute Hillsdale and taking that volume out of this intersection, but putting it over here, what we see is actually that this intersection is substantially offset. Here's Putt Putt and here's Fashion Square. They are not exactly lined up, right? You do kind of want intersections to line up across from one another, and that doesn't exist there. Now, I saw a concept of a roundabout, but that roundabout was here, and that roundabout required this road to be relocated through private property. And we're trying not to just take private property. We're trying to keep things in the public realm, so we're not just showing a roundabout on top of someone's building or taking their property. So if this were to function at all, it would probably have to function as an offset intersection, which can be designed where you truly have different lanes of traffic that are offset from each other. I don't know if that actually will end up solving the challenge. So this is certainly something we're discussing with the county about what to do here and how this plays a part in the study. And hearing your question is helpful, so thank you.
I'll also add that just as a general approach in this area, as properties are redeveloping, we're quite aware of the difficulties with Rio East Court. And so as properties may redevelop in the future along the Putt Putt corridor, efforts will always be made to try to encourage interconnectivity of roadways so that existing intersections or future intersections can be utilized instead of having to cross 5 lanes or hopefully a 4-lane divided roadway in the future. So again, as we look at development proposals, we're always looking at opportunities to try to create those interconnectivities interconnections to address those difficult intersections.
So I'm going to tackle a couple more questions and bunch them together. This is regarding correspondence or meetings with other entities. There's a question about how, what is the correspondence meetings with Vdot, and is there any coordination there at this time? And then another question was related to conversations with the developer of the Wetzel property. So people are curious about what the other communications are going on.
Yeah, naturally, we are working through a number of different stakeholder conversations with properties that may be affected by our work. Specifically, we've had a meeting with K-Tech and City Church because we think that some of our proposed improvements will require really being well integrated with their project sites and how to not have adverse impact on them. We have a number of conversations with Vdot. Vdot's responsible to maintain these roads. They plow them, they salt them, they're in responsible charge of maintaining them. So clearly Vdot is a stakeholder in this conversation. And, the Wetzel property, we know that it's being developed. We don't exactly know what their frontage will look like, but we do know that what they're proposing is approved, there's going to be more people living in this area, and that, you know, to plan effectively and to be responsible stewards of the infrastructure that conveys them, we need to make sure that what we're proposing can integrate with that increased density of number of people living there. So yeah, all of those people are stakeholders in this for sure, as
We'll
are all the
also,
people who are here.
I think we'll also, as we move past this initial stage of input on the concepts, we've also engaged with the city to let them know the overview of the concepts that we have in place right now and under review. We will continue to engage with them since there are two areas where the city fronts on this property. As we look to our second, as we reassess what we're hearing through this process, and we start to refine these plans, there may be other property owners that are potentially impacted that we would engage with. I think we wanted to get through the conceptual process first to see where our next steps are. So there may be possibilities of other contacts with other property owners.
So I just want to check in. It's 7:06. Marty, if you're able to unmute yourself and let me know if we're able to go a few minutes more, or if you'd like to return to the CAC meeting and conversation.
I'm happy if you go another 10 minutes and then let's see where we're at.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question is regarding the Green Tea intersection at Belvedere Boulevard. How does the Green Tea intersection handle the large concentration of traffic at peak times, or because of specific events due to the center, Saka, and the churches?
That's a good question. Let me see if I have a picture of that to use. So the Green Tea does a couple things really well. We know that, so there's a couple things that we're competing and that are in the balancing act here. One is the church, and the church, their peak time is different than other peak times, right? They have specific schedules that they usually are working under, whether it's Wednesday evenings or Sunday mornings or Sunday nights. So their peak hour is different. Although our current proposed solution with a frontage road to their property is up for reconsideration and redefining what the frontage there will be. The challenge, again, going back to this buzzword of access management, their commercial entrance is effectively in an intersection, which makes it very challenging to create predictable and safe engagements for people and cars at that intersection. Now, excuse me, as Belvedere continues to develop and Soka and all of the other things that happen within that community continue to grow, there's going to be increased pressure on that intersection. And what the Green Tea does do is it eliminates a number of movements, conflict points. And so cars now really only need to cross one direction of travel before they have time to speed up and merge. An emerging conflict point is a much safer conflict point than a left-hand turn or a trying to cross two lanes of traffic. If you've left that neighborhood at 4:45 or 5:15, you've tried to make a left-hand turn, it's not hard to imagine how unsafe that is, because you're trying to watch two directions of traffic with two different traffic patterns and trying to cross them all at the same time to join. It's very unsafe. And so what the Green Tea does do is it allows cars to effectively only have to manage one direction at a time and speed up and then merge, which does add capacity to this intersection. It increases the level of service by virtue of that, how it operates. Is it the silver bullet? I don't know. I think that there's going to be increased capacity, increased challenges here. And, you know, the other things that have been considered in this was forcing cars all to make a right-hand turn and make an R-cut left-hand turn down near Greenbrier Terrace. And I think that has its own challenges. So I think that maybe the proper compromise or the end solution might be a Green Tea that has a signal that operates at certain times. But we are exploring that. We're certainly considering that, and our study does consider the future build out of Belvedere. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. We have a very technical question here. How wide does the median you suggested need to be to accommodate our cuts? If wider than 11 feet, doesn't that mean that traffic lanes need to move outwards?
Yeah, and they do. The way it's currently designed, there is a where we did propose an arc cut along the corridor. The median in advance of that does begin to taper and creates the additional space for the arc cut to work. So that is something that we took into consideration. That is how they work. Again, that's a very astute and informed question. But we did consider that, and that is what the current plan does.
Okay, and remind me, you might have answered this with your diagram, but with the newer circle, so your design, where does that leave those who live on Varick Street to make a right turn? I imagine onto Rio?
Well, if you live in Varick, and if we were to go with well, let's get the drawing open, shall we? That's why we have these things. Okay. So if you do live in Varick, under the current, again, we've said that we were trying to maintain all access management requirements per Vdot. So if you live in Varick and you wanted to make a right-hand turn, there's literally no effect. You just make your right-hand turn. If you want to make a left-hand turn, you would use the roundabout to go back. And that is probably considered an inconvenience. And if I lived there, I would certainly consider that an inconvenience. The options available to us under this current concept would be to apply for an access management exception to Vdot to open up that roadway so that you could have a full access. But what that does is, you see, if you haven't picked up on this by now, opening up full access, if you don't have compliant spacing, is going to create additional burden and additional challenge, whether it's safety, congestion, or whatever. So currently conceived, Varick would, right-hand turns are fine. Left-hand turns onto Raya would be via the roundabout, but you still can make a left-hand turn in. So that is not taken away from you. The only movement that would be any different would be that they would use the roundabout to go on southbound Raya.
Thank you. And then we have a few questions just about congestion. And in the new roundabout location, wouldn't the cars back up as much as they would in the original location? So how does the roundabout design address congestion?
Roundabouts handle congestion remarkably well. That's why we see so many of them in ever increasing numbers, because cars are always moving. And so the stop and wait traditional traffic signal approach is no longer really a part of the equation. So they actually handle traffic really well. And here's another thing worth noting. The roundabout we've currently shown is the biggest that it would ever be, but it'll most likely be smaller. Right now it's got 2 lanes of traffic in all directions, and it's not going to be that way. But we haven't done, because we're still beginning and diagrammatically, conceptually determining what solutions are available, we have not done a robust analysis on all the traffic movements. But I have strong reason to believe that not all of those lanes will be 2 lanes. Many of them will be 1. And so that would make it a simpler roundabout for sure. And if this design is something that we continue to consider, that exploration might be warranted. If this design gets scrapped, then I'm glad we didn't waste the energy doing that. But roundabouts handle congestion very well, and they have a very high level of service, which is why Vdot likes them, which is why if you're trying to handle congestion, they're a good solution. I feel like there's another part of this question that I'm missing. Can you remind me, Serena? I feel like I'm dropping the ball somewhere.
No, you answered it. But just going back to design generally, in your approach, how do you design for a line of sight to make sure that pedestrians, cyclists, cars, trucks, buses have the appropriate line of sight, which is a safety concern?
Yeah, great question. So again, this roundabout you see on my screen is a very diagrammatic roundabout. But in real life, a real roundabout, when it's gone through the engineering design process, you'll notice that roadways that approach a roundabout usually do an interesting like deflection curve. And that deflection curve is on purpose. It does two things. One, it slows the cars down. But two, it points them in the right direction so that they can have full line of sight for whatever direction they may go. And a part of the design criteria in a roundabout is to look at each line of sight from where every car is sitting to prove that you have it. And having designed a number of these, I can say that those lines of sight are usually very clear. But part of what makes a line of sight helpful is actually vehicular speed, because the faster the vehicles are going, the more line of sight you need, right? If a car is going 45 miles an hour, you need substantially more line of sight than you do if a car is going 22 miles an hour. And so the very nature of the intersection design actually promotes the line of sight in a much safer manner. If you want to look into that, there's a publication by NCHRP, National Coalition for Highway Programming or something. Their NCHP 672 is, you can download it, or I can send it to you if you're interested. It defines all this. It's mathematical, it's equation based, it's engineering, but it does define these things, and that will be, whoever ends up designing one of these at some point will do all of that for sure.
All right, Marty, I'm going to ask you to chime in here. How are we doing? Do you feel like we should
I'd like-
wrap it up, or are you
I
feeling
think-
like we can continue?
Serena, I think you should wrap it up. You have the K-Tech meeting coming up. And so people will have another opportunity to ask questions then.
That's exactly right. As a reminder, thank you, Marty. We have the rescheduled pop-up that is going to be at K-Tech this Tuesday from 12 to 2. We'd love to see you all out there. We have captured all of the questions that came in, so we will be compiling them and putting answers together for those, in addition to a general what we heard document that we'll be sharing out. David, you have an announcement for us?
Well, yeah, just in closing, just a reminder to all that there is a phase 2 of the work that the consultant has begun work on and will be, I'm sure, ramping up here as we move forward. And it's the phase 2 of Rio Road, the 2-lane section from south of the John Warner Parkway, Rio Road intersection to Melbourne Road, or the city line. So that project will be working through generally the same sort of steps as we're going through here. So there will be, hopefully within the next few months, some initial concepts and ideas and thoughts. And we may be out, we will be out chatting with you on those ideas and looking for your input on that part of the road. So just a quick reminder that there is another section that we're working on. We hope in the end to bring these 2 plans together in a fashion so they both can be reviewed and looked at, and that we can see the full corridor as a whole from city line to 29. And so they will catch up with one another and look like, or at least you'll be able to evaluate the full corridor from the city to just east of Route 29.
Thank you, David. And just as a reminder, the website for this project is publicinput.com/Rio Corridor. And there you can sign up for email updates and share your questions and your comments. And so with that, Carolyn, I think we're going to jump into the CAC conversation. You all, if you're here, you're welcome to stick around and listen. And we're going to do that next. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I don't know if Carolyn's here. So David, do you just want to name, call the names out of everyone who's on the CAC so I can bring them in?
Or you just need to
Sorry,
hear.
I'm not as familiar with them as you are.
Yeah,
Wait a minute or so. I think he hasn't brought everybody over yet.
Not yet. So I'm
I know
just,
Carolyn's having a little bit of technical difficulty, so it may be taking her a little bit of time.
I just don't want to forget anyone here.
Yeah, let me, getting
Hey,
the
Serena.
roster.
Hi there.
Quick question. Hey,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
Am I, do I stick around for this? Is this continued conversation on Raya, or is like,
Yes, if you
Am
could
I-
stick, yeah, the plan was for you to stick around.
all right, no problem.
Okay, Peter Thompson, you want to just go down the list so you can catch
I
all the
see
names?
Peter. Peter's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicole Scrow,
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Hunt,
Oh, I invited Nicole, but let's see. Nancy Hunt. Okay.
Tom Pialetti,
I think I brought Tom in. Yep.
Rick Seaman,
Okay.
Marty, of course, I think he's in.
Mhm.
I believe Todd Cohn, I believe he was
Okay.
here. I'm losing track of who was
Yep.
present.
I have Todd coming in.
Mr. Galloway,
Mm-hmm.
Martha Davis. I'm not sure Martha was here.
No, she hasn't.
Yeah. Lee Condor.
Yep. I see Lee.
I believe Judy is not here today. And I can't remember Brian McMillan's.
Fine. Yeah.
Sorry, I just,
I don't see Brian here.
Yeah, he's there. I see him. Green and my screen's lower right. He's there.
Okay.
And
That's odd.
it looks like Audrey is here, but as
yeah, Audrey
participant,
Coker.
not a panelist.
And Marty Davis is under Steve Davis.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I think we have a
Steve-
full crew now. What's Daniel? Okay, so the way I'd like to do this, that we normally do it, is go around and people ask questions. I'd like to have one question per panelist, and we'll keep going around with a follow-up if there's any clarification needed. The only person we're missing, where's Daniel?
Daniel and Audrey are both still participants.
Oh, there's Daniel. I see Daniel down there. Okay. So let me start. I'm looking at my screen. So the one next to you, David, there's Audrey, welcome, is Peter. You want to start? You have questions? You can unmute yourself.
Plenty. I guess I'll just start with, I don't have, because I think it has a big impact on all of the different intersections, is I don't have clarity on what the projected mile per hour is going to be throughout the corridor, because it's mixed right now at 35 or 40, and people do 45 to 55.
So the question is, what do we anticipate travel speeds to be throughout the corridor at large?
Yes, both posted and practically speaking, because when I was involved in the Hillsdale project, one of the fundamental problems was it was posted at 25, but it was designed for people to do 35, and what was safe became unsafe, and it was never resolved. That intersection at Hillsdale is still a problem because of exactly this issue.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's several strategies that we can and intend to employ to help mitigate the vehicular travel speeds. Now, we can't change the posted speed limit, at least not with a lot of long-term effort and study about what speeds vehicles are actually traveling. The way you can change a speed limit is by observing what the average speed is and adjusting it appropriately. And right now, if we did it, that would be horrible for us because we'd increase it. But the design strategies that we've at least been discussing so far, there's two. There's strategies at intersections, and then there's strategies along the corridor. if by now, if I feel like I'm repeating myself for the 10th time now, but the intersections, if it is a roundabout, the speeds will be slower. That's good. The corridor itself, the strategies are to actually make it feel more constrained. And so right now, what helps promote the high travel speed is a very broad roadway. It feels like the Grand Prix out there. I find myself speeding when I'm going uphill, which is kind of hard to, going downhill, it's even worse. So by constraining the roadway and making it feel tighter will be one strategy we'll be employing, and that's currently included in our plans. The other is to begin to implement kind of rhythmic breakups of the corridor. That is mid-block crossings, that is redefining access points like partial or full entrances, that kind of thing. So how we introduce the median, how we constrict the roadway, how we introduce things like whether it's vegetation or light poles, and like just starting to make it feel a little more constrained will slow vehicles down. I live within earshot of the corridor. I hear cars going what must be 80 miles an hour down that thing sometimes with a muffler that wakes me up. And so I don't know that you can fix stupid, to borrow a phrase from someone who used to be in my life. But we can employ design strategies that help mitigate that. And we intend to with those things I just mentioned.
Okay, Peter, thank you. I'm going to use my chairman's prerogative to just make one slight comment about your presentation, Daniel. It would really be helpful if you label the streets and maybe the direction. Many of your drawings, I have to take a screenshot and think about it. So I'm in the future, as you're going through, to the extent you could do that, that would really be, I think, useful to everybody, communicate better. Tom?
Yeah, that's my fault. I apologize about that.
Tom, do you have a question? I'm just going to go down the list. Who's ever in front of me?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. What bothers me the most is that it seems like this road is being designed to serve two masters. And that always bothers me. I mean, if I was working I was in the military, you had more than two masters, it seemed like. And it's very hard to define and build something and work towards both masters at one time. And with the increased development along the corridor and the huge amounts of development that are going to occur north of Raw Road along 29, and with, I believe, Raw Road being pushed as a alternative to getting into Charlottesville to avoid some of the problems at hydraulic and 29 and other problems on 29. It seems like the local people are going to suffer the most through these changes. Now, some of them I can see are quite necessary and I understand them, but it seems like long-term, we need to have an alternate route to get from the north end of the county to the southeast end of the county to help alleviate some of the traffic that is going to come, because based on the traffic counts you showed, most of the traffic along this corridor is through traffic. I mean, I travel on Raw Road several times a day, rarely during rush hour, just because I'm retired. It is not a problem for me in those times, but I can see some potential problems with some of these, just largely inconvenience, because I traveled down Old Brook to Hillsdale, and from Hillsdale back to Old Brook numerous times a day. That's my main path. And then sometimes I travel down Old Brook to eastbound down Raw Road towards Penn Park. And I use a lot of the exits there. I mean, I come out Huntington and Northfields quite often. And I can see that my life may become a little more difficult because of some of these changes. And I'm kind of a little upset with I guess the political point of this. We can't build more roads, so we're putting as much as we can down what roads we do have. And I think it's going to be hard to convince people who live along this corridor that these changes are all for their betterment. I mean, I can see how it does improve safety, but I'm a little concerned about how much traffic we're trying to throw down Round Road, because it is not a big road. And there's a lot more traffic coming through traffic.
When you say it's not a big road, what do you mean by that exactly?
You can't go much more than wider than what it is, unless you're going to change
Oh,
a
you think?
couple.
I see. Okay, I got you.
I mean, to serve both the local traffic, the people who come in and out on all the little entrances, and then the amount of through traffic that you have. I mean, it's hard to accommodate two buses. And that's what I think the problem here is we've got to accommodate too much through traffic coming from too far north. And it's going to interfere with too much of the local traffic that is going to grow and live along Royal Road. And I just don't know if you can do a good job, and at some point you're going to hit a maximum capacity on Royal Road. And what do we do then? And it would be nice to have some plans in place now for, we got to do something else. We can't live with just Royal Road to have all the traffic from 29 that we want to keep off 29 from going through Hydraulic Road down the lighten the load on Hydraulic and 29 intersection. I think that's what Royal Road, you look at the John Warner Parkway. I mean, I've lived here. I've seen Royal go from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road, all the stop lights, the Hillsdale Drive, the John Warner Parkway, all increased the capacity, trying to move capacity off 29 to avoid building more roads. And there's a limit. There's an absolute limit to what we can do as far as doing that without new roads. I'm a little concerned that we are going to hit our capacity very soon, even with these changes. And there's some good ideas. I mean, I don't object. I think you've done a good idea, some good suggestions, but I'm a little worried about long term what's going to happen.
Does anybody else have any comment along the same lines? Because I've heard similar comments. Anybody else want to say anything? Audrey?
I certainly agree. Having lived here since 1976, when there was just one traffic light between Route 15 and 29 and Kmart. And the road on Ohio is full now. 3 lanes with traffic at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And without some kind of a, I hate to say it, a bypass, I don't see much solution to traffic, and it is going to get worse.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, did you raise your hand? Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm just going to counter that, I guess. I drive this road a lot, going from the city, from some projects in the city to Better Living in Lowe's, often 3 times a day. So I'm in my truck driving this route a lot. It is far from at capacity. I certainly understand the changes that have happened. The John Warner is this used to not be a place that people from up 29 used to use to go to the city. And now it is. And so that is a huge change. I understand that change, comes with some feelings, but I don't think the road is anywhere near capacity in any sort of objective definition. And these changes are helping, right? Like I've also watched and analyzed there's been many iterations of this Belvedere, John Warner. There have been many studies and many designs. And this is honestly the best one that I've seen, moving pedestrians and bicyclists and cars. So anyway, I'm just putting my 2 cents in there.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to follow up too, Daniel. You had said that there would be about 29,000 automobiles. You hadn't said a date of when you thought that 29,000 would be on Rio. I looked at the Wetzel study, their TIA, and they use 2019 data, and then I use 2% a year to 2023, that would give us over 30,000 vehicles per day. What do you think is the peak? Have you done anything beyond that? I mean, because obviously you're going to grow beyond 30,000 vehicles per day. And it's growing at a healthy rate. It grew 2,000 in about 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the numbers that we shared were those same numbers. So the 2019 Vdot published numbers. So there's no smoke in the mirrors with regard to where the numbers came from or what they are. With regard to projections, this is a really different, this is where you get into a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas from different engineers to lay people to politicians to the like. And it's not, that part is not an exact science. It's actually up to quite a bit of conjecture, and it's up to interpretation of what growth will be. Certainly this area is growing for sure. Is it growing at the same rate year over year? Maybe some years are more than others. This is a very interesting time to be doing traffic studies too, because like many people, I work from home 4 days a week. I go into the office 1 day a week. I used to drive to the Waldorf school every day, twice a day. I don't do that anymore. So it's a very interesting time to be trying to calibrate an analytical model on what the actual volumes are. We do know that with increased people moving to the area, the volumes will go up. Will that happen into perpetuity? Most likely not. It will reach a point to where people making decisions or machines making decisions on their behalf of what route they should take will begin to diversify the driving patterns, right? One thing to kind of play off a little bit of this, what Tom was saying, you know, one strategy about getting cars from north of this area into downtown Charlottesville is to provide numerous routes by which that can happen. And right now we have, you know, hydraulic, you've got Berkmar, you've got 29 itself, you've got Hillsdale. If you want to cut through my neighborhood, like a lot of people do, you can go through Greenbrier and pop out, you know, basically behind Bodo's. You can go down the John Warner Parkway. You can use Rio. And if you're using Rio, you can choose to cut through the Locust Grove neighborhood. And I'm not proposing that cutting through neighborhoods is a good idea. What I am saying is that by providing numerous opportunities to get from one place to another spreads the load across numerous corridors, right? And as they begin to peak, people or the machine learning on their behalf will begin to pivot them toward another direction. So that's a long-winded way of saying there's a lot in consideration right now with regard to projecting traffic volumes. Yes, you're getting new people in the corridor. Yes, the area is getting new neighbors that are moving to our vicinity. I cannot say with certainty that that means growth in perpetuity to this corridor. I'm not willing to say that.
Okay, thank you. Nancy, do you have another question? I saw you had one. No, you're all set. Rick?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. One is that, Daniel, I really liked what you were saying about the idea of trying to slow traffic down by using some of these various techniques. And I think that's important for this conversation about traffic volumes, because I am concerned that Rio Road becomes a de facto eastern bypass, which is really what it would, I think, could wind up being if we're not clever about how we manage the traffic flow and the speeds that cars travel. And I am concerned a little bit about if you are southbound and you come through the donut and through the roundabout, and then you hit the limited access section of John Warner Parkway, people are going to pedal to the metal to get from there to the bypass. And that could be a real interesting enforcement problem, but that's a different conversation. But I would like it to get something on the record. If you could share your screen again and pull up kind of the image of the roundabout there at Rio and K-Tech. And I could make a because I wanted to get something on the record that I heard over and over again at the pop-up that I attended. And I just want, I know it's going to be in the comments. The one that has not this one, but the scale drawing.
Oh, the plan of the whole thing?
Yes, and then just zooming in
Okay,
on the roundabout piece, if you could do that.
Sure, hang on,
quickly.
yeah, bear with me just a second.
I'll try not to
Many
make
buttons.
Yeah, I don't want to make this long drawn out, but just a quick point.
All right, let me go down. Let's travel down the corridor. This is what you want to look at right here?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
The concern that was expressed early on in some of the chat comments was the proximity of the exit from Dunlora to the houses that are there on, I guess, what is Dunlora Ridge. That would be to the left of Dunlora Drive on the diagram. And then the proximity of the roundabout itself. And then particularly the way Rio Road curves in really tight to the, that piece right there. And then over where Rio Road curves in tight to the houses on the other side.
And Laura Park,
Yeah, Dunlop, really, it's really the townhouses that you're showing above. Yeah, those, and there's going to be additional townhouses that aren't even built yet along Rio Road there. So what the suggestion was, and this is just the idea that I heard expressed a couple of times, was to make a minor modification to the roundabout, pulling it slightly in I guess what would be southeast. If pulling it in that direction a little bit, and then taking Rio Road, and instead of having an S curve, sacrificing some of the wildflower meadow and bringing it straighter into the round, something like that. Probably doesn't have to be that severe because of your traffic management and access management, but something like that to pull it away from those houses, I think would go a long way to satisfying some of the criticisms that I was hearing from those neighbors in that area.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Rick. Appreciate that. Certainly, that's something we'll be thinking about. I'm curious, when we talk about moving it, I would love to hear what people think is let's use distances, shall we? Like, do we want to move it 20 feet? Do we want to move it 200 feet? Do we want to just move it to the other side of the moon? Like, what are we talking about distance wise?
Yeah, I think that's really, to me, that's something that a traffic engineer and an acoustics engineer would work out and say, okay, what's a reasonable distance? I'm looking at it saying to myself, 150 feet, 200 feet, something like that is probably enough just to pull it away from those houses.
What's the current distance that you have in the proposal? What's the current distance?
Which distance, Nicole? Sorry.
Sorry, from the roundabout to those homes. What's in the proposed?
That distance there?
Yes.
I believe that's about 350 feet.
And then from there to the homes off of Fowler.
This distance?
Mhm.
Just looking at in relative terms, I'm going to guess that's about 180 feet. Just to respond briefly to your suggestion, Rick, and I do believe we're going to be trying to refine and polish what we think this location can and should be.
Yeah.
One thing I think I talked about, and this would be a good chance to kind of reiterate it, is part of what makes these types of intersections very safe is the angles at which you force cars to approach, right?
Right.
That is very specific and very important. And this S-shaped curve if we just imagine for a moment that these houses aren't even here, right? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just like, for the point of an example, like what we really want to do is force them to come into that intersection at a very specific angle so that we can control the speed at which they enter. That's the only way that a roundabout works. And so by this current reverse curve, that's how we accomplish that. Now, so I'm clear, we will be, now that we're hearing these comments and we're listening to people's concerns, we will be looking at where this thing can go besides where it is. I mean, we know it was put here and it might go there. We threw out here, maybe it won't go there, but we're trying to, whether people want to believe us or not, we're trying to get out ahead of this so that the situation is much better for the long term. And one way to do that is by trying to simplify and promote good access management. So there is certainly a number of variables for us to consider, but your point is well taken. We will look at that. We will report back soon.
Yeah, and I you know, I'm not being overly critical. I'm just, because I like the design, and the original Vdot design does not solve the Dunlora problem. So, you know, I think this is much better. The next question that I have, and that this is more, I think, for David and Ned, is, okay, so we now have smart scale money that was originally appropriated for the Vdot design. And we talked earlier about the potential timing and priorities of the projects along this corridor. You know, how does all that fit together? And would this then logically be one of the first things to do because we already have the funding?
Ed, do you want me to start or do you want to jump in?
Well, I mean, either way is fine with me.
Go ahead.
I answered that question last night in my view of it. The board's made a decision on the application. We've submitted it up to VDOT. They've funded it, and now it's on a timeline. Changes and modifications to it. Having watched other smart scale applications that have gone through the process, they've certainly come back to the board for updates, both timeline and then, you know, revising and figuring out how it's going to work. You know, this new proposal, while it is a concept, we of course got the Railroad Corridor study going before we even knew this VDOT application was necessarily going to be approved. I think we thought it was going to be approved. I'm glad it was approved. But right now, the project that's on the table that's been funded by the state is in the hopper and it's moving forward. If I use this same example last night with the community that I met with, the community members I met with, if the board, if everybody in the room last night and everybody on the board was like, whoa, we want to do this new one, it would take some very specific process steps that the board would have to do that I don't think we've done before. At least since I've been paying attention to the board's work. It seems like it's so similar, like this proposal kind of confirmed that roundabout is the right idea. And now we're starting to look at different ways to place it all within the same area. Like if this proposal had come back and said, no, roundabout's off, you hear and propose some other scenario, then we'd have two competing things like, oh, well, now we got this project that's funded. But for all intents and purposes, this proposal thus far has confirmed for me that a roundabout is the right solution. And as we go through the current application with the current placement, I think we have an opportunity to learn from this and how to take that current application and make it a little stronger, make it better. But at this point, what's on the table and what has been funded from the state is in motion. And I made this statement last night. People that were not in favor of the roundabouts were like, well, what if you wanted to just not do it and do something else? I said, well, this supervisor wouldn't be going to VDOT after submitting and taking the time and getting the project approved. I'm not turning around to the state and going, I don't want this application approved now. That has ramifications beyond that individual project. So David, that's my response that I've said out loud now a few times.
Well, I think you covered just about everything. I think the point, maybe one additional point that might be obvious to most if you think through it, the VDOT plan Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong, is also a concept. It is not fully designed, and it will have to go through a design process. So Ned, as you mentioned, as they progress through this, some of these same questions might come up. I think what the consultant was using the opportunity in this study is, again, to get ahead of that and lay out some concepts. But that study we have accepted and have been saying all along is an approved study that's working through a course to get constructed probably over the next 4 to 6 years based on what they're projecting the funding for it, probably more closer to 6 than 4. But they are beginning to work on the design fairly soon with funding in this fiscal year to do survey work. But it will have to go through the same sort of vetting process, and issues and concepts about design may come up and probably will come up, and there will be public hearings on that process.
Thank you.
Okay, Audrey, I want to go through everybody first. Todd, do you have anything? Somebody has their microphone. Could you mute yourself for me, please? Okay. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I want to go back to talking about putt-putt plays. If you look on your accident numbers, that's the second most dangerous intersection on the street on Rio, and yet there's no plan really. I mean, you mentioned maybe there might be someday, but there's actually no plan. I mean, you got plans for the other. You got a plan for Hillsdale, and you got a plan for the Warner Parkway, but there's nothing for putt-putt.
Yeah, Todd, I think I missed the first couple sentences you spoke, but I think I'm understanding what you're saying. You're inquiring about why there's not any proposed solutions at putt-putt per se.
Right.
And to be honest with you, my understanding is that falls within the small area plan. That is our study was intended to. Yeah,
I understand that,
yeah.
But if you look at what's actually in the small area plan, that's just incidental to rerouting Hillsdale. That's really all that is.
Yeah.
And it's just verse. It's not a diagram or any kind of real plan.
Yeah, there's a lot of things at play in this topic, and I'll try to go through a couple of them. The small area plan did recommend routing Hillsdale through the Fashion Square Mall and bringing it to the intersection near Putt-Putt and proposing a roundabout. And I don't know the likelihood of that truly being implemented, right? It could, but you are taking a public road across private property that wasn't built to public road standards. So it's going to get really expensive really quick to make that happen. Not that any of these things are really cheap, but rebuilding roads is much more expensive than just improving ones you have. That's really not something we can argue about. Now, what I've talked about with a couple members internal at the county is what we're going to show about this, because the small area plan recommended a roundabout there. I don't know how reasonable that is. And so we're trying to plan for start with Hillsdale, I'll make my way to Putt-Putt. If Hillsdale does not get rerouted to the Fashion Square Mall parking lot, then we have to deal with what Hillsdale is, where Hillsdale is, and that's to provide sufficient quality and quantity of vehicle movements at that intersection. Hence, we're looking at it. If Hillsdale is not rerouted to Putt-Putt, then the situation at Putt-Putt largely remains unchanged, which means it's going to need some kind of improvement at some point in time. And I think the only improvements that have currently been talked about was what I mentioned during tonight's show about an offset intersection, which is a signalized intersection. It would get a signal. But that is really, this is this gray area where we're trying to navigate who's responsible to figure this out right now, because it's kind of in the small area plan, but it's directly adjacent to where our study is ending, which means we've talked about it, which means we haven't proposed anything specifically, but it also means we're talking about it. So I'm really glad you brought it up. Hearing you talk about it is helpful for me to realize that maybe we need to discuss what it looks like to be more conscientious with what's happening there. So thank you.
Okay.
Daniel, it's correct too that in our conversations with both Vdot and internally, we felt like from a cost and timing standpoint that regardless of the ultimate implementation of the small area plan recommendations, the Hillsdale being roundabout was important. And what I mean is it can be done sooner, quicker, at less cost. And even if ultimately Putt Putt was relocated and Hillsdale Drive was relocated, there is still value. There is not a lost investment because that being would still be important for the residue roads and traffic. So just wanted to kind of, I think that's where we were, that to emphasize that the Hillsdale Roundabout has both short-term and long-term benefits regardless of the recommendations of the small area plan.
I would quickly add, sorry to belabor this, but I think it's important to mention, there's a massive development pending on the corner of that intersection anyway. Like there's future plans there. And so kind of dovetail off what David was saying, let's actually get to hear what the development plan might be and how it can be an improvement also. So, but again, thank you for bringing it up. I'm glad to hear that it's on your mind, and we'll put it on our mind too. So thank you, Tom.
I was going to say, we actually heard an initial look at that development a number of years ago, if my memory is correct. Let me just think. I have Brian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from that presentation, the developer was, if I recall, was on board with almost anything that the county wanted to do for resolving that intersection, like contributing to it and changing where the road was and everything. Unless I'm remembering wrong. So I don't think Todd was on the committee at that time.
No,
But the rest of us
okay.
were.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marty Davis, do you have something to say? Anything? I'm trying to get everybody one shot and then we'll open it up and just raise hands afterwards. Marty? I lost her.
No, nothing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so who else who have I left out? Oh, Nicole, raise a hand. Oh, Lee, hasn't mentioned anything. And then Nicole, go ahead, Lee. Excuse me, Lee.
I guess it'll be more helpful if I show something. So let me share my screen here briefly. I took a look at this too. I've also talked to a number of the residents in Dunlora Park subdivision in particular. Kind of a different approach to the same thing. Again, it's still a roundabout on Rio Road, but it's kind of stretched out. What's called a dog bone roundabout. Half of it is on the north side of the railroad bridge and the other half is on the south side. And this first drawing that I showed is a detail of the bottom half, but just wanted to make a couple of comments about what this addresses. First of all, bicycles and pedestrians. It includes a shared use path on the left side of Rio Road East that could continue all the way to Penn Park, connects to the Ravenna Trail. There is a transit stop on Rio Road headed north that connects, has accessibility via pedestrian bridge to K-Tech and a shared use path on the left side of Rio Road, proceeding all the way conceivably to 29. The ramp for the pedestrian bridge serves as a sound barrier. So it would actually improve the situation on Dunlora Park with regard to noise, traffic noise. It also doesn't change the access to K-Tech. It provides for a non-signalized intersection at Belvedere, which traffic would turn right and use the upper half of the roundabout to come back south. Now, the one drawback, if there is a drawback, is that it's going to be a longer way to go. If you're coming out of Dunlore and want to go south on John Warner Parkway, you've got to go all the way up to Greenbrier Terrace and make the turn and come back the other way. But it would still be quicker than sitting in traffic waiting for the light. So in terms of actual fuel use and time, it would actually be farther ahead. But this has all the provisions. Nowhere does the pedestrians have to cross more than one lane of traffic at a time. The bicycle lanes are maintained coming north from John Warner Parkway. The bicyclists would continue basically headed onto Ryle Road east and then cross on the pedestrian crosswalk and resume going north. Southbound remains the same. So it solves a number of problems that the other proposals did not. It also has better access to Rio Point, which isn't really addressed elsewhere. That roundabout, of course, would be paid for by the Rio Point developers. So I just another way of skinning the cat, as it were. It also doesn't significantly change the roadway geometry. Your construction costs are more reasonable. You would need a retaining wall in this area because of the terrain, and at the other half of the roundabout, there's 3 residential lots that you'd have to buy, which is about $1 million to buy those 3 lots to do this part of the roundabout. But it maintains traffic flow. It's safer, and like I say, it preserves for the most part the existing geometry. So that's all I wanted to say at this point about that. I do have some comments about the Hillsdale thing, but I'll save that for later.
Okay, Daniel, let me just suggest, since time's late, you have a suggestion. You can answer it later on if that's all right, because I know there's a lot to digest at this point in time. So I just want to try, since it is late, to see if I can just get all the other questions in, if that's all right. All right. Nicole, you said you had something?
Yeah, appreciate the thoughtfulness. I know this is a complicated corridor. I just, a few things I wrote down was I didn't really see much about public transit. So just curious about that along the corridor. And I had this in my notes, but just want to reiterate, Putt-Putt, my sister lives over there. And a lot of people do live over there in those 2 apartment buildings. So I know the complexity of having overlay, but just wanted to highlight that again. And then I just wanted to point out, I know this is in phase 2, but it would be great to have another connection to the city. So if there's pedestrian connection along Rio Road going towards the city, I think that's in phase 2 though, but anyway, just wanted to highlight that. But yeah, biggest thing is I was curious about public transit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We did have a meeting with CAT recently. We received their comments as a stakeholder. There's a lot about it that they like. And they also informed us about a number of operational things that we need to be considering with regard to where they prefer the stops to be just operationally. So at the next iteration, you'll see their feedback included as well. I'm glad you brought up Putt-Putt again. I think this kind of resounding feedback of this corridor is necessitating that maybe we need to be thinking about that area more proactively as our team. And then with regard to phase 2, yes, that phase 2 is a whole nother slew of challenges that, but we're currently working on that and hope to have some more to share soon. So thank you.
Okay, so who else has questions? Great, okay. Serena, I have a question or two for you. Well, let me just do this. Before I do that, we had two Q&A. We had two Q&A questions. Let me just read it. The first one did anyone's projections of traffic add to the development planned on Park Street in the city, on the Wetzel property, on the Dunlore Farm property, and on the additional Belvedere property? I don't know if that's clear. And the other question is, how many feet Varick is from the roundabout? We answered that, but how has many feet, I can't even read this, Varick is from Rio, and how many feet is it from Rio? So I think we answered the second one, but do you want to, and I think we answered the first one, unless you have anything more to say. Daniel, you want me to read that again, or?
Yep.
Did anyone's projections of traffic add in the developments planned for Park Street in the city, on the Wetzel property, on the Laura Farm property, and on the additional Belvedere property?
Thank you. Okay. The answer to that is no and yes. The reason it's no is because we're still exploring programmatic improvements that might be worth exploring further, conceptual ideas. The next step for us is to begin to really vet those analytically. And so we are going to be considering build outs, future volumes. And so the answer is both no and yes. And should we come to believe that after this series of public engagement sessions and feedback that what we currently have is worth considering to pursue, we'll start to fill in those gaps. If we feel like it needs to be scrapped, then we'll be starting with some new ideas. So some of that is kind of to be determined in the days nearly ahead of us.
Okay, thank you. Serena, can you give us a sense of how many people showed up at the pop-ups, and will their comments be somehow documented so that everybody can see them?
Yeah, so we had 52 people at the first one, and if I remember correctly, 19 came to the second one. And then, you know, even though we had that rain reschedule, 5 people showed up yesterday. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, I spoke to 5.
So at the pop-ups, we were encouraging people to write down ideas and comments on Post-its. And so we have photographs of that, and I'm just documenting all of that input now. We had a few people that filled out paper questionnaires, and then we did a kind of a team debrief afterwards to get some of the kind of summary comments. We were encouraging people to write things down, and I was, you know, telling people that we weren't recording the time. So hopefully some of those folks went back to public input and shared. We've received many emails, so I'm confident that all of the tenor of the comments will be, you know, collected, and the plan is to compile all of that and share out some themes that we've been hearing, and certainly the public input is quite transparent. You can see all the comments verbatim.
And do we, I'm somewhat concerned, and because some of us live on Rio 2-lane road. Do you have a sense of the phase 2 schedule right now? Can we just briefly touch on that? And I'm not holding you in stone, but just give us a sense of how that's going to progress.
I can take that. And well, Daniel, why don't you start? Go ahead.
I'll just say I'll start, but then you can tell me where I was wrong and need to change course. So we have begun our analysis of phase 2, which starts at kind of a high level, looking at patterns, projects, plans, developments, so on and so forth. And what we're beginning to understand is that our work on Rio phase 2 is going to be very different than what our work on Rio phase 1 is going to be. It's not going to be so much about bringing the idea that solves the problems, but how do you coordinate so many different projects that are actually happening like right under our nose currently. And furthermore, that corridor has very, very extreme challenges down near, I want to say Agnes, where you go into the city behind Locust Grove, that very sharp hairpin turn with the guardrails. that chunk of the corridor has a lot of different challenges. So we've begun our analysis. I was actually hoping that we would have begun the design process by now, but what we're seeing, we want to actually report back to the county about to get some advice on their interpretation of how we're interpreting it before we go forward. So we have some conversations to have with the county, hopefully tomorrow or in the very near term. With part of our work too is making sure that we're available to react to what phase one is throwing at us. And based on the emails that I was receiving and the comments that I was reading, I thought that this may have had to be a complete wipe the table clean and start over if that was what was required. And to be available for that should we need to be. But that's not actually what I think I'm hearing right now. So I think we're kind of polishing the apple on phase one more, looking into things, refining, improving, but not throwing out our work and starting over. So again, phase one and phase two basically converge on the John Warner intersection. And so we need to make sure that we're not stubbing our toe with that area for either phase.
And the phase two is going to take over the next 5 months, 10 months, 2 weeks, what?
The scope of work calls for it to be done by May. I start to speak for Daniel that I think we'll be quicker than that in this process. But some of that depended on the work that we would have to have done in phase one. So I think we're going to be able to beat what's called for in the scope of work. But I'll defer to Daniel as to what his read is. We're still, I hope you all understand, we're still trying to absorb what we're hearing, and we still have one more public process. So before, there's some fluidity in how much time we need to spend on phase one and phase two. And we're all the same number of people and the same number of staff. So there's a little fluidity with two, but I think we'll be on a schedule that puts us ahead of May. Daniel, tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, it could very easily be by May for sure, because the opportunities are much less and much simpler in many respects too. Because we're not proposing big roundabouts on that area of the corridor. It's more about making the pedestrian connections and the bike connections work and calming traffic where traffic is a little out of control. So it's in some ways it's a little more piecemeal, almost like an a la carte approach. Whereas in phase one, it's very much creating this unity between all of these high volume areas.
Beyond,
I think May is very doable. May is very doable.
beyond what you just mentioned, are you also looking at exits from the various communities that border along the 2-lane portion? Because that's the area that it seems to me help is needed. The road is narrow and there isn't a lot of room to expand or add turn lanes.
Well, it's kind of weird. There's places where the road's very narrow, and there's places where the road is awkwardly wide.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also places where sight distance is incredibly challenged and difficult. So there are some safety concerns on that portion of the corridor. We're aware of those. We've documented those. We'll be reporting to the county. My plan was to do it tomorrow during our debrief meeting on this, but we'll see if that happens or not.
Okay. Fine. There's some other questions, Serena, but I'm going to stop here on the chat. We'll forward them to you. You can answer them. Okay. Carolyn. So
we're going to catalog all the questions and respond for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I'm surprised your voice didn't give out by this point in time.
I'm starting to feel tired. It's definitely hitting me.
Okay, we have just one other small item. We're going to have liaison reports, Ned, and then Daniel Bailey, and then we'll close the meeting. So Ned, you and Nico, if you don't mind.
I'd recommend Daniel go first. I'm in my office and the cleaning crew's here, so you probably hear a lot of background noise.
Okay. Daniel, yeah.
Not much. I just want to point out the Riviera Conservation Alliance, which is not part, is just posted and done their kind of stewardship paddle down the Riviera behind the Rio district. Happy to report they only picked up 2 trash bags full of trash along the corridor of that's in our district. that is kind of below average, but is trending well, and that's kind of consistent with last year's paddle as well. So that's not related to planning, but just a nice little tidbit of as we are concerned about the natural environment around us. And with regards to more of the planning commission, we did have a few with if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the Crozet master plan is in its final form and heading back to the board. It's a amazingly well done document by the staff. A lot of kudos there and a lot of turns, and sets a good standard for that. And we'll be starting to look more towards, put an eye towards the redoing of the comprehensive plan, the planning commission.
Thank you.
Did I buy enough time for you, Ned?
I may have to talk quickly before it starts again.
Okay.
The three big areas that I was not able to give response to at the last CAC, there's been complaints about the culverts that are at the end of Dunlora Park. Last night in the meeting I was in, the residents who live in Dunlora Park described something I didn't know. That's a by right project, but they recently had submitted for a site plan amendment. The original townhome concept of facing Rio Road has changed. They're actually decreasing the number of units down to 3 townhomes and 3 detached homes. I haven't seen any schematics or anything, but it sounds like the 3 detached homes could be around the curve heading to Barrack Street. If you know folks in Dunlora Park, I think they are very up to speed on what the newest piece is. Regarding the culverts left out there, the developer had indicated they were going to be starting construction a few weeks ago. The culvert items you see laid out are for the construction, but if they were supposed to have started and they haven't, I'm guessing or reading into that means construction is imminent now that the new site plan amendment's done and they're just waiting for the final approval, working through the details of whatever that site plan amendment is. So hopefully that building gets done, that's all complete, and the kind of storing of the culvert and the concrete structures out there will obviously go away. Nicole's here for the 999 project. Nicole, that was one that folks had asked for some timing on relative to the house that needs to come down, some concerns about some debris. The update I received is that those things have been handled and that it sounds like that home is scheduled for demolition and will be happening soon, probably before the next CAC meeting. But that's the update I received from staff. Do you have any further updates on that one that you want to quickly just throw out there?
Sure. Yeah. It's been mowed and kind of cleaned up from the removal of the asbestos of that old home. That's what that trash was. We had to remove asbestos. And it's really just a matter of the difficulty of getting a crew out there. So it should be in the next 2 weeks. Yeah.
Getting crews anywhere right now seems to be
yes.
interesting. And then the Parkway, Judy, when she's been here, she's asked about the vegetation on the one walkway that was overgrown. That's been confirmed to me that that's Vdot right away. So now I know whose it is. Then I have to determine if Vdot's going to handle the trimming, the upkeep of that. And if not, then what does that mean for the county? So that's the most recent update I've received on that, and then that'll be ongoing, and I will update it again. Marty, you had sent I couldn't print that PowerPoint for some reason, but the Chick-fil-A I've had ongoing conversations about. Because it's still got that real sharp U-turn. I may need help with folks that are seeing that on a more regular basis to keep me apprised of how that's going. I just don't make it over there during what would probably be peak hours for the restaurant. My work's over on Pantop, so just my daily routine doesn't take me up that way on a regular basis. But I just had another conversation about that particular thing this past week, so that's ongoing and on the radar with the county staff that I talked to.
May I just interrupt on that for a second? I was there one Friday afternoon around 5:30, and the line was back on Woodbrook. I then drove in and the second line was empty. If they just put up a sign that said, don't stand on Woodbrook, we have a second line, like Bodo's used to do, that I think would be a big help. So it doesn't, so maybe you could mention that, or somebody could mention it to them next time.
Yeah. I'm still, I mean, they can obviously process more cars with the 2 lanes that they're doing. I mean, they do a good job of processing vehicles. It's just that sharp turn can get backed up. So I still don't understand why they can't take them down and into the parking lot further and loop the drive-through back.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to continue to suggest and try to find out if there's a reason why they can't do it that way. Then they'll tell me, I suppose. The same for the Allen and Allen building. I know that that's been addressed. I think that tends to come and go, and when it becomes more problematic, that has to be alerted, and then we go back and send word back to the property owner on that item. I know the stormwater and the management items, especially back through on and through to the Carsbrook area, is a bigger picture item that I've even brought up. So that I don't have any new updates on that item. And then Marty, if I'm missing one, you'll have to let me know.
Now, just to mention, finally, the East Rio sidewalk construction, we got a notice it's getting started now. It's supposed to be finished in January, but I'd like to just see it get it started. So that's good news right now.
Yeah, I figured those were going out because I know like the Dunmore HOA sent out, a notice showing the construction delays and all of that. So that's all coming very quickly. Yes.
That's great. Okay, I have nothing else. Does anybody else have anything else? David, Rick first.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there any updates on Rio Commons?
I don't have any. Again, that's a by right project, so nothing is coming up to me on that. So for the by right stuff, unless I ask specific questions, I'm not going to.
Sure.
Nothing's going to come in front of me.
I know, David, do you know anything about what's happening?
No, sorry, not off the top of my head, but I can check it out before the next meeting. I'll let you know what the status is.
Yeah, just curious to keep us up to date on that one.
Sure. Yeah.
Are you looking for like timeline, Rick? Is that what?
Yeah, just timeline and, is it moving forward? Has there been any change in plan?
Gotcha.
I can let you know whether it's been resubmitted and where it is in the review process. We obviously don't know what the builder's timeline would be necessarily, but I can give you what we know.
Yeah, because I know there were some concerns that went back to the builder and needed to be resolved.
Right.
Okay.
David, I just wanted to do a real quick reminder that this coming Monday at 6:30, there'll be the joint CAC meeting. I think you've received an early notice from me and then an updated one. So just wanted to give everyone the heads up. I think it's focused in on equity, the subject of equity, and I think you were provided a link to the county's information related to the county's efforts and on equity and the report on equity, the profile. So just want to give you a quick reminder of that. I think you'll be receiving, if you haven't already, a invite to that meeting. I think probably tomorrow. I haven't seen one yet. That's it. Just wanted to do a quick reminder.
So we're going to have a meeting next month in October. Topics to be decided. I want to thank Serena, Daniel for hanging in there, David for helping arrange this, and Carolyn for keeping us all on the screen and shifting us around. So everybody enjoy the nice weather this weekend, and we'll see you in a month. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody.